Hi, Dr. Chelsea Tanner. Thank you so much for joining me today as my next guest on this interview series for my independent study at UT. My first question for you today is, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, what some goals you have for yourself right now in your career, and any projects that you're working on that you'd like to expand on today?
Yeah, sure. Um, my name's Chelsea Tanner. I am a flutist. I just recently graduated in 2020 with my DMA from UT Austin. I am also a life coach and a mindset coach for musicians. I've spent the last 6 months or so creating online course offerings, whether it be Flute Boot Camp, which you can maybe see in the background there. Um, uh, that was a high school program in the summer. I have since created a course called Winning Mindset Academy, which is all about sort of the way in order to win an audition or to succeed in performances or really gain confidence in yourself, like what you need to do, how to empower yourself in the practice room, in the moment, and kind of leave self-doubt behind. I'm doing a second round of Flute Boot Camp, all about excerpts in December, and yeah, so that's sort of what I've been up to. I'm also trained as a life coach, and I am basically hoping to grow a business based on helping people gain confidence in their self image and in their body image, as well as still engaging in the music world fully. 2020 has kind of thrown everyone for a loop, so but it's been a great opportunity to explore different avenues other than just flute, which has been kind of my laser focus for the past 10 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And where can the viewers find you on social media, or do you have a website?
Yeah, my website is chelseatanner.com. That is full of blogs and ways you can get in touch with me for coaching or for flute lessons. Um, and my Instagram is at Chelsea Tanner Flute. Pretty much everything there's probably more stuff on there than on my Facebook, which is just Chelsea Tanner Flutist. So yeah, check those out.
Awesome. And I will drop those below for anyone interested in checking those out. Thank you. What does mental health mean to you? How do you apply that to your daily life and your career?
That's a great question. Mental health to me, um, the first word that comes to mind is clarity. Because if I am very clear on what I want to think about something, I feel like I have so much more control of the outcome. Mental health to me means being very aware and being really conscious of what we're thinking and how we feel and how, just awareness of our mindset going into any given situation. It could be any day, it could be any practice session. Um, Now, for what I do personally, I journal every day. That's something that I started to do in quarantine when it started in March, and I've filled up like 4.5 journals since then. And it's nothing organized, it's just things that I learn, it's things that come out of my brain. And I think there's something to writing it down that really releases a lot of pressure and a lot of mental spirals that we sometimes get ourselves into. Um, as for practicing, if I have a frustrating, time practicing, I do a lot of journaling, a lot of exercises I've learned in terms of, being able to mentally coach myself through tough moments in the practice room when I think that it's never going to work and I can't do it and it's never going to happen. Just sort of reflecting on those things is really important. So it is a daily practice for me to sort of take stock of like, what am I thinking? How is that affecting how I'm feeling? How is that going to then affect my actions and then my results? So I'm very conscious of that at all times.
Yeah, I love that aspect of like being really clear about um, what you want out of a certain day or practice session, and how that can definitely help guide you through. Can you go a little bit deeper into like the different, I forget what word you used, but like things you do in your practice session to help get you through those tough times?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of thoughts that are habitual for us that come up, whether it be like, there's no way I can do this, like, oh my gosh, you're going to miss all those notes, like, I can't believe that, like we have all of those things that come up. And, when that happens, it becomes overwhelming. I literally just like take my flute journal, which is separate from my other journal. But I've been keeping flute journals for years, but I just literally write down all my thoughts. And, one exercise I like to do is look at it in third person. So I write down all the sentences that are in my brain out on the paper, and then I'm like, okay, this person who's thinking this, like, of course they're frustrated. It makes so much sense that they're frustrated because they're thinking all these crazy thoughts of like, that sounds like it would be terrible, right? And just sort of being able to have compassion for yourself in those moments. Because I think a lot of the times what musicians do is they shame themselves for thinking they're bad, or they shouldn't be anxious, or they shouldn't be nervous, or they shouldn't be whatever it might be, or however they're feeling. So, and then they put shame on top of it, right? And then it's a whole thing. So that's one of the ways I like to do it, is sort of separate myself, be like, oh my gosh, okay, so that's how they're thinking. Okay. And that's literally being able to have compassion for myself in that moment. And another thing I do is something I teach in my coaching, which is called a thought model. So basically, I write out the circumstance. The thought I'm having about the circumstance was, I played notes on the flute. My thought was, that was terrible. This is never going to happen, right? My feeling about it is, probably pretty bad, sad, frustrated, all of that stuff. And then, when I'm feeling sad and frustrated, I can really reflect on like, what action am I going to take from there, right? And sort of like slow my roll a little bit and be like, I'm not going to have a productive practice session if I'm having this thought constantly. So then really choosing, okay, I'm not going to believe this thought. I'm choosing not to believe this thought really consciously. And even sometimes writing out, I'm choosing not to believe this, is really helpful. And it may seem trivial, but it's truly transformative when you do it over a period of time.
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely something I'm going to bring into my own practice. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I have seen on Instagram and know that you talked to like the UT Flute Studio this semester about like stress and burnout. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your experience with handling stress and burnout, and kind of like how did you deal with moving through those emotions, especially being in the university level and as a student and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so absolutely. This is something that I've come to know more about this year, and really have reflected on my time at UT and through all my degrees. I wasn't so good at managing it when I was in it, but upon reflection, I have a lot of realizations I can share. One, first and foremost, is we want to get to the root cause. I think a lot of times we talk about burnout as just like this thing that happens to us. Excuse me. This thing that just like happens to us, but it's caused by something, right? So I always like to find the root cause of like whatever, whether it's a problem in flute playing, whether it's anything. It's like, I want to find the cause of it. I don't want to just put a Band-Aid on it, right? So a lot of times we think about self-care or managing stress and things like that as like, and I'm so sorry if you can hear the background noise, but we think about managing stress as like, stress just happens to us and then we have to manage it somehow, right? But what causes our stress, right? I think that's a really important question, because, and spoiler alert, it is how we think of any given circumstance. So if we have the same circumstance as someone else, they might not be stressed out at all, and we might be a mess, right? and that's because we're thinking about it in a different way. So really our thoughts make us feel stressed out. It's not like the project, because someone else might not be stressed out about the project, right? So inherently it's our thoughts that really do create that feeling for us. So when we have the feeling of burnout, or we feel stressed or whatever, I think it's really important, once again, to have a lot of clarity in the way you're thinking about your circumstances. If you have a certain number of things to do, let's say you have 5 projects to do, that's neutral. You can think that's a lot, you could think that's like nothing.
Mhm.
But saying, oh, I have so much to do, and you tell yourself that constantly over and over and over, that's going to add up, right? Oh, I have so much to do. That makes me feel stressed, just like saying that, right? And you can feel the stress in your body. So you're practicing feeling stressed because you're having the thought, I have so much to do. Whereas if you say, oh, I have 5 projects to do, that's a little bit different. And over time, that compounds, right? So if we think we have so much to do and we take action from this place of stress and anxiety, the energy and the energy that fuels our actions, the emotions that fuel our actions, dictate our results, right? So if we're taking action from like a really frustrated place, the quality of our action is going to be different than if we're taking it from a really excited place. Like if I'm excited to practice and to discover new things in my practice session, I'll probably practice differently than if I think I suck, so now I have to practice to get better,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So like how we fuel our actions, what the emotions we feel because of our thoughts, are really what create whether we have burnout or not. But it does take a little bit of just observing, like, how am I actually thinking about this situation? Which can be hard in music school because wearing a busy badge is like an honorable thing, like everyone's busy in music school and that's just the culture. But choosing to think about it a different way can be really transformative.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can definitely see earlier in the interview when you said, when you think of mental health, you think of clarity. And this is just like branching out and really applying it to like all of the different spots in our lives as musicians, but also just as people. Great. So my next question is, how has the pandemic that we're in right now affected you? And what are some like silver linings that you've kind of discovered throughout this time? Yeah, just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. Oh, a lot of different ways. Obviously, um, the world sort of went online, right? So in a lot of ways, I think it has freed up some mental space for me in terms of offering things online, whether or not people would want them. That's not even really a question anymore because so much is online now that I think it's really transformed the way we're sort of looking at things. And I've taken that opportunity to sort of really grow a presence online and really try to reach as many people as possible in that way. And it's also, for me, been personally very transformative in terms of having time to reflect. I was kind of like a go person for forever. Someone could have called it workaholism. It was pretty absurd for a while. It was definitely never wanting to spend time alone with myself, with my own thoughts. I always had a podcast on. I always had something going to distract myself. Like just really being able to do self-reflection in the pandemic, I think has been a huge gift personally for me. And that's something that I've taken away from it that I am so grateful for because I've learned the value of it and how really just like being able to work on your thoughts and create what you want in your life from the way you think about things is super powerful. And having the time to discover that was extremely valuable to me. So Yeah, I think teaching online is obviously not the most ideal thing ever, but I, you know, I've moved every year of my like adult life since college. I've never renewed a lease, and this year was no exception. So, having to move to a new city is something I'm kind of used to now, I suppose. But having the world kind of go online has been helpful in just adjusting and being able to teach people who are in like Mississippi and Connecticut and different places, and not necessarily just where I am. So
Yeah, definitely. There's been so many silver linings that I think a lot of people have discovered. Even though the pandemic at first seemed really intense and overwhelming, I think we've all been able to find at least a few things that have come out of it. I'm curious if in the beginning or at any time during this COVID-19 times, if you felt like a lack of motivation and how you got through that, or you can also talk about motivation when you were a student or just in general.
yeah, so many thoughts on the concept of motivation. Yes, definitely. I've gone through a lot of like ebbs and flows when it comes to motivation. I'm generally a pretty focused, driven person, and I feel pretty accountable to myself. So if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. It's pretty much done. So in terms of motivation, I don't ever seek external motivation, mostly because that's a really quick way to burn out also. But and it's usually not fueled by, it's not going to be my best work basically, if I'm using some sort of external motivation. But motivation itself is interesting, right? Because we can be motivated by really negative things. You can have negative motivations for things like, oh, I have to get this done or else I'm going to get a failing grade, right? That's a negative motivation. And I think a lot of times we put that on ourselves, especially when we're in school, right? Or, oh my gosh, I'm going to have a terrible lesson unless I practice. I really need to practice. But the motivation for that is so I'm not terrible, right? So I think that it's important to also notice, because feeling motivated is a feeling, right? You feel compelled to take action through a feeling of motivation. So whether that's positive or negative is really important to reflect on, I think. But also, instead of saying I want to be motivated, because then I risk negative motivation and reinforcing that, which is, if I tell myself I'm not good enough, maybe then I'll practice, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then I practice telling myself I'm not good enough, which is the opposite of confidence, right? Like true, actual confidence. So that's an issue that I've explored a lot recently. So negative motivation, I think, is something to look out for and just observe if that's something, that happens ever. And then I like to think about, instead of positive motivation, inspiration. How can I become inspired, right? Because if I'm inspired, things are getting done. I'm doing all the things, I get excited, like, you know what I mean? And like, that's sort of something that I don't ever think of it in a negative way, right? If I'm inspired to do something, I'm going to write a blog post, I'm going to create a YouTube video, I'm going to do something where, or I get an idea or something happens and I can get excited about it, right? When we think about stuff we don't want to do, and we're like, how do I become motivated? It's sort of like, well, you can even just think about it as a neutral thing, right? Like, I don't love washing dishes, but I do it, and I don't think about like how much I don't want to do it, because it's just make me not want to do it even more, So I think that, once again, just like observing how you're thinking about the things that you have to do, that's really telling. Because are you telling yourself that it's not worth doing and you can't believe you have to do it, and like, oh my gosh, I don't even want to do this because what's the point anyway, right? Or are you saying like, what's something new I could discover in my practice today? Like, what can I learn in the next 5 minutes? of practicing. And I did that a lot this year when I prepared for a competition, and I had these like time frames in which I was going to practice. I was very deliberate about, scheduling, because I was also preparing for Flute Boot Camp. So I was like, okay, I have 5 more minutes. I'm so tired. Okay, what can I learn in the next 5 minutes? What can I discover in the next 5 minutes? And there was always something. If I looked for it, there was something that I could discover. And I think that that's sort of the power of intention and clarity behind, what we're doing. So I think more about inspiration rather than motivation, because I think motivation has sort of a bad connotation to it sometimes, but yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. Next question. What are 3 books that you would recommend to the viewers to read that have kind of helped transform your mind into this really like positive, inspiring mindset that you have?
Yes. So the first one I would recommend absolutely to everyone always is called Mindset by Carol Dweck. Have you read that one? It's so great. It really kind of shows the difference between like what a fixed mindset is, or as opposed to a growth mindset. A fixed mindset is very much like you have a set intelligence, you're this talented, you have these skills, and like you can't grow from there. A growth mindset is I can learn anything. Intelligence isn't fixed, all of that stuff. So that's like number one for me. That was such a game changer. I just read a book called The Practice: Shipping Creative Work by Seth Godin. And it's all about, and you can apply this absolutely to musical practice, but it's all about having a set dedicated time where you just create something and put it into the world every day. And sort of the benefits to that, and it sort of walks you through all the excuses we give ourselves and to try to get out of it. And I think that it's such a powerful book for creative people, just to show up consistently and to just put stuff out in the world and say like, yeah, this is what I have to offer. It might not be A+ work. Which is for me something I've struggled with before, and I think that's a super powerful book. And can I just only 3? Okay. I really enjoyed Untamed by Glennon Doyle. Have you read that one? Yeah, I read that. I actually bought that when I was in Austin doing my last recital in March, right before everything shut down. And I think it's so powerful because it's about choosing to, think about yourself in a way that you respect yourself, right? Recognizing that we're all conditioned by society to think certain things in certain ways, and musicians are not exempt in this category, right? And so I think it's so important to sort of like do that reflection in our own lives too. And there's this one quote from there that really stuck with me, which was, she was telling her daughter, if you have the choice between disappointing someone else or disappointing yourself, you should never disappoint yourself. Always choose to disappoint other people rather than disappointing yourself, like every time, and I was just floored by that, right? Because I think society, and at least what I have internalized from society, was do everything for everyone, no matter how it makes you feel. They can never feel uncomfortable. You can feel as uncomfortable as you need to, but no one else can, And I, there's so much of that book that, especially I think for women, that should be like mandatory reading, like that's definitely one that I loved. I also want to plug the book, Flow and Essentialism and The Inner Game of Tennis. I think that those are also really great books, but I think that it's interesting you said that just after the motivation question, because I think that it's books like that are such an inspiration to me to sort of connect dots and really reflect on my own experiences and how does this apply to my life, and that's really inspired a lot of creativity in my own life. So reading is awesome.
Thank you so much for sharing. I'll also share one I'm reading right now, pretty popular. You're Badass by Jeanne. I haven't gotten too far into it yet, but I've been loving it so far. So
That
yeah.
was actually the first self-development book I ever read, and here I am. So yeah, that was actually the first one. I think I read that in I got that in 5 years ago. I was at my artist diploma at UT, and it totally changed the way I saw things and just how I can look at the world. I still listen to it on audiobook at least once every 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah, I love reading. I think reading is so powerful. So thank you so much. Well, to wrap it up, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Gosh, it's so funny because I'm okay, my undergrad self, my master's self, my artist diploma self, or it's I feel like I've gone through so many phases that I would give different advice to each little Chelsea version. I really think that the most powerful thing that I've learned so far is that our opinions of ourselves matter, right? And I think that especially in classical music, we're taught to outwork everybody else. We're taught to apply to everything because you never know, and there aren't more opportunities than there are, so you have to take the ones that are available to you, even if the job doesn't pay well, or even if you have to travel 3 hours for this festival audition, or whatever it might be, And by saying all of that stuff, we have to do all this stuff to be then a valid person. It's we're sort of not validating ourselves first. And we're, as students, I think especially, we're not giving ourselves credit in a lot of ways, and we're also not developing opinions ourselves. And this is one thing that at UT I learned a lot from Professor Gedigian. She was adamant that we all had opinions about our playing. I think when I went there, I was sort of a lost little person, and I had my master's, but I think I had just not reflected on whether I really love the way I play. What did I like, what did I not like? Did I actually think I was good at the flute? That never crossed my mind, and I think that it's so important because the way we act and the way we show up is 100% decided by what we think of ourselves. And our confidence is absolutely rooted in our opinion of ourselves. So if I think that I'm bad at the flute, that's how I'm going to show up to an audition. If I think I'm really excited to share this playing that I really love, how it's going, that's how I'm going to show up to an audition, And just knowing that my opinion of myself matters more than anyone else's, which is why I love Untamed, right? My opinion matters more than anyone else's is sort of the advice I would give, though I don't know if I would have been ready to hear it.
Yeah, that's really great advice. I remember my first lesson, I think, with Dr. Parker, which maybe was even my audition lesson before I was even really a student at UT. He looked at me and he said, "Do you love your own playing?" And I was like, not really. And he's like, you can love my playing, you can love all these other famous oboists playing, but it really matters that you love your own at the end of the day, which has been such a process, but I feel this independent study has definitely helped that, and recording myself and really just sitting with myself and my playing. So definitely great advice.
Yeah,
Well,
that's amazing.
yeah, thank you so, so much for coming today. This was so wonderful, and I'm so excited to share this with everyone out there in the world. Do you have any last words or anything before we sign off?
I don't think so. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts. I have so many thoughts. So,
Um,
so yeah, and I think that what you're doing with like this independent study, getting, to know other, musicians and their thoughts and philosophies on how they approach their career and life and how they manage all these things is so important. And I feel like it's going to be so beneficial to a lot of people.
yeah, I hope so. Well, thank you so much.